Welcome to the Women Inspire Aspire podcast. In this episode, I talk to Mythili Udupa about music therapy. Hi Mythili, thank you for accepting my invite to appear in the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, Venkat. I'm doing really great. This is my first podcast. I'm glad I'm here.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you in the show. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, where you are from, what you do, etc.?
I am from Bangalore and I am doing my PhD in music therapy from Sri Balaji Vidyapita Pondicherry in the field of music therapy and complementary medicine. Right now, I am working as a research associate and music therapist at a Parkinson's and movement disorder clinic in Bangalore.
It's very interesting that you're doing research on music therapy. Can you tell us what music therapy means?
What music therapy is not, I could start with that and then come to the question which you have asked. Most of the people, my friends and my family members, they ask me, just because you have learned music, now that you are a musician, can you go and treat illness? It is not that way. Music therapy is something which is very much evidence based. Go and look at research papers, look at clinicians, read research on where a particular therapy can be applied. For example, right now I am working with Parkinson's patients. Parkinson is a neurodegenerative disorder. How can music therapy help Parkinson's? One example could be through rhythmic auditory stimulation. This is purely neurological. This is not a passive listening where the patient listens to music and he becomes alright. It's an adjunct therapy where we try to understand where this particular music or a tempo or a rhythm is actually going and targeting the neurons which are responsible for Parkinson's. For example, now I said RAS, that is rhythmic auditory stimulation. As most of you know, a Parkinson's patient loses his internal metronome. That means he loses the rhythm of his everyday movement. And in such a case, what happens is when an external tempo or a rhythm or a certain music which can synchronize with his neurons in the brain, that could take over the dead neurons, trying to understand the neurological target which the music can actually go and help the patients. I wanted to understand how Darbari Kannada could be brought in to understand the stress level of working professionals. So we had this small research on working professionals for 21 days. A flute 15 minutes piece was provided to all the participants. They had to listen to only Darbari Kannada for 21 days. They had to cut out of any other music. The feedback was extremely good. We did a small statistic analysis too. Perceived stress level, quality of life, anxiety levels. People who would wake up 2 or 3 times in a night, they were able to sleep throughout the night. Such qualitative results also was provided by the participants. So there are many researches which are happening through standardized questionnaires to try to understand their anxiety, stress level. Carnatic music has been used in operation theaters, also during pregnancies to understand the cortisol level of women who's experiencing pregnancy pain. So there are biomarkers, blood level is checked. So there are many research papers which are coming out how Carnatic music or Hindusthani music or raagas especially have been used in clinical aspects too. Bradykinesia, that is the whole body becomes too rigid. So if I am speaking to you right now, I'm moving my hands, I'm moving my head. But a Parkinson's patient cannot do it because the neurons which are responsible for all the movements which we do is actually dead. Very simple example I can give you. When we were kids, we always marched to the band in our schools, isn't it? Our left and right hand coordination would go wrong, but never our feet missed the beat to the band. So we always were in sync to the beat of the band. That is because our brain neurons have the capacity when there is an external rhythm or any sort of music or a pitch, for example, the brain neurons slowly start synchronizing to the external beat. The neurons which are dead, they are sleeping, but the other neurons, the rest of the neurons which are firing, they take an alternate route. They bypass the basal ganglia and they go and target the motor neurons in the cerebellum of our body, which is again responsible for motor movements and balance and coordination. Brain is so plastic. I go from place A to B. The road is dug. So we take a detour. Similarly, the brain has the capacity to take a detour. The neurons start working in another direction, leaving the dead neurons as it is. This is the basic concept of neuromusical therapy. The neurons are targeted. The brain neurons start firing according to the external stimulus, and they bypass and start working with the other neurons which should be working. Prefrontal cortex, there is SMA we call, motor cortex and cerebellum, all these are responsible. That's how the same concept is used to treat patients with aphasia, people who cannot speak. The left part is responsible for the speech. We try to target the melody part, that's the right part of the brain. This is how the therapy is brought into the clinical aspect, the neuro rehabilitation aspect.
Okay, so how do you identify that neurological target?
Every ailment or disease, there is certain kind of pre-screening which is done. Since I work with Parkinson's patients, we know that the basal ganglia, which is responsible for the dopamine generation, is also responsible for motor movement, is probably not generating dopamine because the neurons are 80% dead. I am a clinical psychologist and a Carnatic musician. Go and read papers or evidence where a certain research, which say a randomized control, has been applied and done to these participants and what the results are. Understand this particular intervention has actually helped in certain outcomes. How can I get it into a Indian context? Or now that I have a evidence, that's just the physiological. There are many biomarkers too. When there is a certain frequency entering the brain neurons, we could see that it is going and targeting the neurons which are responsible. Once the evidence is got, then start working on the intervention protocol.
That's pretty deep. So you said you do the research and then contextualize to the Indian environment. Do you use Indian data or the Indian patient's data for your study?
Yeah, because since I'm working in Bangalore, I have patients from all over India in the hospital where I work. Lot of Parkinson's and other movement disorder patients only in the hospital. So I get to meet them every day. Of course, there is not much research yet in Indian context on music therapy for Parkinson's because my job as a research student is to collect evidence. And when I'm in that process, I have been realizing that Indian research is good, but the music therapy as such has not entered the clinical aspect. Hardly any research we could get to read and understand. Are there any protocols developed at all in India?
Let's talk about the music part of it. We talked about the research part, we talked about the neurology part. Now let's look at how music addresses the neurological disorder. In your phase of experimenting, exploring, and working with the patients, what are the kind of results you have seen with the music, especially the Indian music? How do you relate them to the solutions that you might have to the neurological disorders that you have seen?
I could give you one experience which I had with a patient who was very skeptical to want to experience what music therapy was. Many patients who come, they think it's just a time pass or it's just for entertainment. So this girl is going to sing now and I have to listen, and is that going to cure? So this is what happens with most of the patients because the awareness and the evidence or how are we going to actually bring in is not yet very clear to most of the patients, and that is very understandable. So this patient who had come for a treatment for Parkinson's had this balance issue. While screening, our doctor had asked him to close his eye and stand for 3 seconds to understand whether his vestibular balance was fine. And before even the doctor could count 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, the patient could not hold on to his balance and he had all kind of a feeling. Later on, we were trying to explain to him how music could help him. And then we asked him what's his favorite music. And he was skeptical and he said, okay, I like Manna Dey's music. So I gave him my YouTube and asked him, you play, sir, you play whichever music you would like. When we say music, it is not whether it is Hindusthani, Carnatic. It is just the music the patient can connect to. That is very important to us. So he played his favorite music and I asked him, sir, whenever you are ready, I just want you to get up from your chair, close your eye and just listen and experience the music you love. The music was played, the patient started listening to it. And once the song was in the process, he closed his eye gently and got up from his chair. So we wanted to check whether he could not stand for 3 seconds without music. Just few minutes ago with the doctor, the song was say for 3 minutes. Stand for 2 minutes, eyes closed, and he had tears in his eyes when the song was done, saying, "How did I stand?" It was just the support. His focus was not on his balance, but it was on his music. This is just a very, very superficial example which I'm giving because it was just for the patient to experience that once his focus goes on to somewhere else, his cognition is taken care of.
Why did you call it as superficial? Also, when you did this experiment, did you have any neurological equipment to observe his brain activities?
I did not have. That's the reason I said superficial. The patient was skeptical. He said, "This is something fashion nowadays and I do not want to be part of it." That was his response. Realized that he could not stand for 3 seconds while the screening checkup was going on. When the music started, it was his music, his song. He played the song. It was all from his side. The ownership was from his side. He had to get up when he was ready. We did not even force him to do that. But when he realized that he just stood for 2 minutes, we had no recording, there's no biomarker or any EEG. It was just the subjective feeling. He could stand for 60 to 90 seconds without any support or without any fall just because his complete focus was onto something which he loved and enjoyed all his life.
Let me ask this. Do you think he could achieve the same thing by focusing on something else other than music?
Definitely. There are many people who do yoga and they do this Trataka, and there are many yogasanas which helps to bring this balance. Of course, this is one of the complementary therapy. Whatever is comfortable to the patient and which the patient can connect to. So this is one aspect. There could be many other. We just have to understand what he is connecting to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the details. So let me conclude this discussion on the music therapy with one final question, which is, what are your future plans looking like in this area? In the sense, how do you plan to expand or how do you plan to improvise your study or the experiments that you are doing?
Music has always been for entertainment purpose. Nobody treats music beyond stage as much as I know. Being a musician myself, when I wanted to get into the therapeutic aspects, even now I'm asked, why am I not singing on the stage? This music is beyond entertainment. The Indian music system, bhajans, film songs, Bollywood, the kind of structure it has, say the tempo, the tala aspect, the raga aspect, whatever is holding the whole music, that garland together, every element of music is therapeutic. If we can analyze one particular swara, say Pratimadhyama in Kalyani, only that frequency could go and touch the emotive part of the brain. The rhythm has the capacity to go and entrain with our brain neurons. So, Carnatic music, Hindusthani music, or any music as such, the Indian music, when I say, the whole sagara or that ocean of music has to be brought out, not for entertainment but for therapy. From India, people go out for surgeries. They pay hefty amount of money. I want people to come to India to get to understand what is this Indian therapy for Parkinson's or for stroke or for speech. For all these neurological conditions, yoga has been part throughout the world now. I want Indian music also as a therapeutic aspect. Protocols have to be developed. Just not Indians, but the whole world can actually come and utilize it. A happy therapeutic part where it is not painful to them also. End of the day, the therapist is happy and the client is also not feeling overwhelmed.
That's a great vision and mission. I wish you all the best to achieve that. Now, again, let's come to the music part. Do you have any specific guidance on which ragas create what kind of effect? Need not be related to any specific disease or treatment, but in general, when you practice yourself, when you sing Carnatic ragas, have you come across any literature that explains the effect also?
There are a lot of musicians now who are taking up these kind of evidence research. Previously, we got to know only through the literature by, say, Sangeeta Ratnakara, for example. So he has mentioned certain ragas, and therein, through musicians, through Vagayakaras, we realize, okay, this particular music, Kalyani, Shanta, Ranjani is Raudra in certain way. But it depends on the emotion depicted by the musician as well. Kalyani is, of course, they say Shantarasa. Certain musicians have their very heavy chested breath wherein they can actually make a shanta into Raudra. It is basically how you express. It is certain emotion the musician is carrying and how it is expressed. But I am sure in next 10 to 15 years there will be a lot of evidence and research.
How is your music practice going on? Are you practicing every day?
Not at all. Completely into academics right now. I do practice. I teach my daughter at home, work on my research and look for evidence. I miss out on practice, yes.
Okay, now that we have talked a lot about your work and its impact, let's talk about your hobbies and interests. Any other thing other than Carnatic music that you pursue?
I love dancing. It's body movement. I am not a trained dancer, but any music, I just like moving my body to it. It's like a catharsis movement for me because when my body is moving, I tend to release lot of anxiety and tension. I love doing that. I come from a family of Yakshagana players. I remember my dad practicing Yakshagana when I was a baby. And my cousins, they are very good Yakshagana players from Mangalore. I come from a place called Katilu in South Kendra. So it's famous for Yakshagana. I love that art. I am told that I pick up very well. Done few shows previously. So that's another thing which I really love because it's just not dance. It's a raw use of the body, not like Bharatanatyam. And it has lot of dialogues. And I love dialogues along with the body movement. And the movement are kind of very rugged. I really love doing that.
Let's talk about the societal issues that you care about.
I used to teach music for many, many, many years. I realized that music was something where every parent brought their child to so that they wanted the child to sing on the shows on the TV. Whether the child wants to do that, whether the child is ready to do that, or is it really necessary?
How do you propose that we propagate Indian music other than through performance?
Any sort of music, Carnatic or Hindusthani here, I'm not going to the Bollywood part. See, it has a grammar, it is basic education. Just like how we learn mathematics, this has a math of its own. This has a beauty of its own. It has a pitch perception. So the whole cognition which is responsible for any activity, music can take that. And it is basically transference. If I learn a certain raga completely with particular tala, probably my critical part of the brain which is responsible for some puzzle solving or a mathematical problem solving is also getting activated. This awareness has to be brought out is what I feel because music is not just for singing on the shows. A child should learn an art not for performance but for building herself or himself as a good citizen because here you get that discipline, focus to become a certain personality, small little elements which can make a human, make a child into a best personality. The Indian art system has it. That really hurts me a lot because at the end of 3 months we are asked, no, when is my child going to be on the stage? So that goal was never mine. When it comes to art, I do not want this Indian art to lose out because all these parents they want their child to be performers. Before I got into clinical therapy, I was actually enrolled into another PhD previously to understand the cognition part of Indian music on the executive functions of a brain. Executive function is extremely important for me, you, or anybody. What are these executive functions? Basically, if I'm speaking to you now, speaking what is relevant, I'm not shouting, I'm not screaming. We need certain rules and regulations to be followed every day. So, what is that? One is inhibition control, another one is cognitive flexibility, another one is critical thinking. See, all these are extremely important. If the child has to adopt to this world, take this example of first Dhruvatala here. What is Dhruvatala? Sa re ga ma ga re sa re ga re sa re ga ma. So we teach the child in say Maya Malavakola, and after a while when the child understands the first line, the rest of the lines the child has to come up understanding the formula of the first line, where the child is developing the critical thinking. And second thing is every swara, the child understand the pitch perception and the swara perception. Now I can play with the child asking, okay, change the madhyama in the first line, change the gandhara in the second line. The child need not be bothered what raga But if the child can be flexible enough to understand the pitch, cognitive flexibility is happening there already. And I say inhibition control, where you have to work inside the grammar. So the child has to have that 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 4 count no matter what. It is changing the swaras, it is changing the raga and creating the third and fourth line by himself, understand the first line. The first line is like a formula. So many things which are actually happening in one lesson there. This is just a gist of what I'm trying to explain. So if this can be brought into a school setup, the child can actually play with the swaras, understand what can happen when two swaras meet. Now I change the pitch frequency, dip the frequency from Re to Chatushruti Rishabha to Shuddha Rishabha. Now I feel different. So the child has to experience that. It also works with their emotions. The pedagogy has to be changed basically.
At what stage should we introduce music in the curriculum?
Child first can start singing whatever rhymes, bhajans. There are many beautiful songs which are coming up. But to understand, there needs some cognition. I have had the experience of teaching some gifted children. They could understand the pitch perceptions easily at the age of 4 or 5. But there are few children who take a long time, in the sense they are 8, 9, 10, when they try to get that concept of, okay, ma, one Shuddha Madhyama and Prati Madhyama, now they sound different. So it is, every brain is different. There is no one particular age as such. Even a 60-year-old man decides that now I feel I can actually connect to this music, I want to start, I think they should. Whatever I have spoken today is through my experience and all the falls and the pains I've experienced. This is what I have shared with you.
Thank you for sharing your reviews. We are coming towards the end of the podcast. Do you have anything else to add?
Thank you. I don't know how you found me, because not many want to speak to a music therapist, because music is for entertainment. So, but you took time to speak with me today to understand how music can be used in neurotherapeutical aspects. I'm really glad to you. I think if it can reach audience, patients, or even students who are stuck in the loop of performance, it would help them to give them a release that it is not just for performance. I am really thankful that you brought this onto this platform, Venkat.
Great, wonderful. I'm so happy that you got a platform to express yourself, which is the objective of this podcast. I found you through LinkedIn. There are students who are very interested in therapy through music. Thank you so much for being a guest in our podcast. I wish you all the best for your life and whatever you aspire to do. Please take care and bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye.
That was a great podcast with Mythili Udupa. Please subscribe to this channel and follow it for more awesome podcasts. Opinions expressed by the guests in this podcast are their own. The host or the sponsors of the podcast do not condone the opinions expressed by the guests or the actions arising out of those opinions. Any decisions or actions that the listeners might take as a result of listening to this podcast must be based on their own judgment and will be at their own risk. The podcast host or their sponsors will not be held responsible for the consequences of any actions and or decisions taken as a result of any content in this podcast.